Hello there, I'm Kareem Zachary and you're watching All 24 News Wellness Program broadcasting to you live from the capital Algiers. To the headlines. In Tehran, mass demonstrations reject violence and foreign interference. Iran claims control and evidence of meddling, and the US president considers strong options. Next, in Sudan, rapid support forces kill civilians in Darfur and southeast the country as displacement rises. Also in our news, Morocco represses Sahrawi activists, 2 Sahrawi prisoners on hunger strike, and human rights groups call for international monitoring. And later on, Trump backs Greenland annexation, Denmark warns of crisis, and NATO moves to bolster Arctic security. The details are right up. Welcome back to the details. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, thousands of Iranians took to the streets on Monday across the country's major cities, protesting the wave of violence that has shaken the nation for the past 2 weeks. In Tehran, state television aired footage of what it called a million-strong march at Engelab Square, with crowds waving Iranian flags and chanting against foreign interference in their country's affairs.
Iran is fighting on 4 fronts: an economic war, a psychological war, a military war against the United States and the Zionist regime, and today a fight against terrorists. The great Iranian people have never let the enemy achieve their goals. If Washington launches another attack against us, the Iranian army will give Trump a lesson he will not forget.
Tehran says the situation across the country is now fully under control after more than a week of protests. Speaking on Monday to diplomats in the capital, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi accused the Zionist Mossad agents of monitoring the protests and blamed foreign interference for the violence and killings. He also claimed the US administration was turning the demonstrations into bloodshed just to justify interventions.
The situation in the country is now under complete control. What is happening now is not demonstrations, but a terrorist war on the country. Trump's statement on the protest constituted interference in our internal affairs and fueled the violence to justify intervention. We have obtained voice messages which have come from outside the country.
On the same occasion, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Tehran is ready to negotiate, but only in a serious, fair way and without outside dictates.
We do not seek war, but we are fully prepared for it. At the same time, as I have repeatedly said, we are also ready for negotiations.
In the same context, Tehran has sent an urgent letter to the UN Security Council protesting what it calls US interference in Iran's internal affairs. According to the Iranian news agency Tasnim, the letter condemns Washington for inciting violence and destabilizing the country. It argues that no principle of international law allows any nation to use human rights or support for peoples as a pretext to provoke chaos, threaten, nor intervene in another state's affairs. On a related note, Iran's foreign ministry says communication channels with Washington remain open, both through the U.S. Special Envoy and the usual Swiss mediation. Spokesman Ismail Baghai told reporters Monday that despite internal protests, Tehran is committed to diplomacy. He also noted that mixed messages from Washington have created a state of ambiguity in relations.
You call them leaders. I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule.
Channels of communication between our foreign minister and the U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff remain open, and messages are exchanged through them when necessary. Iran is a country that does not abandon the negotiating table. We have remained committed to dialogue over the past decades, and channels of communication within the United States do exist. We are a nation of dialogue, but we will not accept dictates. There are contradictory statements that surface from time to time, creating ambiguity. Statements by the US president contain conflicting messages that point to a lack of seriousness and goodwill, and this does not help at all.
For his part, US President Donald Trump says he is considering military action against Iran following the recent protests and related casualties. Donald Trump stressed that Washington is taking the situation very seriously and did not rule out what he called very strong options, while keeping specific plans under wraps. American media report that he will receive a briefing Tuesday from senior officials on potential responses to the unrest in Iran.
At some point I'll meet. Yeah. There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent. If you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination. But I don't think they're trying to play. I think they just want peace. They want to have freedom. The protesters are after freedom. Iran has not allowed freedom for a long time.
In reaction, Beijing has rejected any use of force or threats in international relations, responding to President Donald Trump's warning of possible military action in Iran. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said China opposes interference in other countries' affairs and stressed the importance of protecting sovereignty and stability. Meanwhile, Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu condemned foreign meddling in Iran and spoke with Iranian Security Chief Ali Larijani, agreeing to maintain communication and coordinate efforts to strengthen regional security.
China hopes that the Iranian government and people can overcome the current difficulties and maintain the country's stability. We have always opposed interference in other countries' internal affairs, consistently advocated that the sovereignty and security of all nations should be fully protected by international law, and opposed the use of force of it in international relations matters. We call on all parties to take actions conducive to peace and stability in the Middle East.
And speaking of the Middle East, moving on to Palestine now, where 4 Palestinians were killed on Monday in southern Gaza. 3 died when a Zionist drone struck a group of displaced people south of Khan Yunis, while another man was shot and a woman wounded by occupation forces in the city center. Palestinian sources say these attacks violate the ongoing ceasefire. In the Gaza Strip, still, children have slowly begun returning to school since the fragile ceasefire on October 10th. Lessons are being held in temporary tents set up in the heart of displaced persons camps. Here's Karim Mustafawi now.
Here in Beit Lahia, in the heart of this devastation, around 400 Palestinian children are attending makeshift classes. Inside this crowded stand, more than a dozen girls sit on the floor in 2 rows, wrapped in sweaters and padded jackets to protect themselves from the winter cold. Among them is Tulin al-Hindi.
Although we don't sit on chairs, thank God we started attending school. It's been a while. During the war there were no schools and we were bored. We want schools to read and write so we grow up and become smart.
However, this makeshift educational center is located near the so-called Yellow Line, controlled by the Zionist forces. Tulin's mother worries constantly until her daughter returns home.
Our area is close to the Yellow Line, and being here puts us in constant danger from quadcopters, random gunfire, smoke bombs and sonic bombs. This truly deeply worries me. From the moment she leaves for school until she comes back home, my hand is on my heart the entire time. I swear, yesterday there was a lot of random fires.
The staff of Tulin's school also face daily danger. They say they hear gunfire every day.
The Northern Educational School is the first educational center in northern Gaza, located in Beit Lahia. We are very close to the Yellow Line, almost every day, sometimes every hour. You can hear the sound of gunfire and bullets. The shots reach the tents surrounding the school daily. This school stands as a symbol of resistance and resilience.
Despite the constant fear felt by children, their parents and the school staff, the children of Gaza are gradually returning to school, bringing hope for a new beginning for the generation that has endured nearly 3 years of Zionist aggression.
And in the occupied West Bank, occupation forces carried out a large-scale raid and arrest campaign on Monday across multiple cities and towns. According to the Palestinian news agency, 14 Palestinians were detained, including previously released prisoners, in raids spanning Nablus, Bethlehem, El-Bire, and Al-Quds. Elsewhere in the Middle East, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said Hezbollah's weapons have become a burden on the country and called on the group's leaders to act rationally under state authority. In a Sunday interview, Aoun stressed that the Lebanese army and government are responsible for protecting citizens nationwide, urging Hezbollah to realistically consider regional and international circumstances while respecting the state's role in ensuring security.
The army is present and the Lebanese state, with its official institutions, is responsible for protecting citizens and serving all Lebanese across the country. Therefore, placing weapons exclusively under the authority of the state is essential. Some believe that this weapon can appease Israel, secure withdrawal, or prevent attacks, but in reality, its continued existence has become a burden on its own community and on Lebanon as a whole. That is why we need to be realistic and carefully read the regional and international circumstances unfolding around us.
Elsewhere in Syria, terror and uncertainty grip Aleppo as residents cautiously return to neighborhoods ravaged by weeks of fierce fighting. Streets are littered with rubble and unexploded ammunition, while collapsed buildings and shattered homes stand as stark reminders of the conflict that tore through the city. Here's Zahra Frijani now.
Terror, fear, and anxiety, confusion, and disorientation greet residents of Aleppo as they return to their neighborhoods. On Sunday, families began returning to a contested district in northern Syria that had witnessed intense fighting between government forces and Kurdish groups. What awaited them was a scene of widespread destruction, streets littered with rubble and unexploded ammunition.
We couldn't leave because the shelling was so intense. We were trapped. We reached a checkpoint, but Kurdish forces wouldn't let us pass. So we were forced to come back. We couldn't leave the house at all because of the bombardment and the gunfire.
Ambulances and emergency crews moved into the area to assist civilians, clear debris, and work to defuse landmines left behind by the fighting, and the threat remains constant.
It was a nightmare of a day, and the night was absolute hell. Terror, fear, psychological pressure, anxiety, confusion, and disorientation. We didn't know if the day would ever end, or even whether we were alive or dead. Thank God the situation is calm now. There is no more shooting. What remains are the remnant of the war, shrapnel here, and an exploded shell there, and bullets scattered everywhere.
Between ruined buildings and the long devastated streets, the marks of war are unmistakable. Entire neighborhoods are barely recognizable. Collapsed buildings, torn apart homes, and heavy damaged streets. The impact of the strikes is visible everywhere, forcing residents to move cautiously through the debris and past structures at risk of collapsing.
Moving on to another topical development, and as you followed in our headlines, a deadly drone strike by the Rapid Support Forces hit the city of Sinjar in southeastern Sudan, killing 27 people and wounding 73 others. According to the AFP, citing Sennar State's Health Minister Ibrahim Al-Awad, the attack targeted the headquarters of the 17th Division during a meeting of military, security, and government officials from Sennar, Blue Nile, White Nile, and Jazeera states. Initial reports suggest around 100 people were injured in the strike. Meanwhile, the Sudanese army says 19 civilians were killed in a large-scale ground attack by the Rapid Support Forces in North Darfur. The Popular Resistance working with the army says it repelled the assault, captured several RSF fighters, and inflicted heavy losses on the rebels. Meanwhile, a drone strike on the Cartel market in South Kordofan killed 5 civilians and injured 13 more. The Sudanese Doctors Network condemned the attack, calling it a blatant violation of international humanitarian law and the rules protecting civilians. The Sudanese Transitional Sovereignty Council stressed the need to secure borders and stop the flow of weapons and vehicles from the Central African Republic and Chad. Deputy Chairman Malik Akar, meeting with Darfur's Deputy Governor, pledged government support for Central Darfur State. He called for active cooperation with the Sudanese army to regain control of localities and ensure security along the region's borders.
The state has witnessed an influx of mercenaries, weapons, four-wheel drive vehicles and other forms of military support that have strengthened these militias. The deputy speaker affirmed that the national leadership will stand with Central Darfur State and work to address the many challenges it faces. Despite the exceptional circumstances and limited resources, the state government remains determined to contribute effectively and meaningfully to the regular forces and to mobilize all localities within Central Darfur State to secure and protect its territorial borders.
In another African development, the Somali government announced Monday the cancellation of all agreements with the United Arab Emirates, including those involving federal institutions, member states, and affiliated bodies. The decision affects operations of the ports of Berbera, Bosaso, and Kismayo, as well as all bilateral security, defense, and military cooperation agreements. The Council of Ministers said the move aims to protect Somalia's sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, and constitutional order.
Following a careful assessment of recent developments and in accordance with its constitutional powers, the Council of Ministers has decided to cancel all agreements concluded with the United Arab Emirates, including those signed with government institutions and agencies, related entities, and existing regional administrations with the Federal Republic of Somalia. This decision covers all agreements and ongoing cooperation at the ports of Berbera, Bosaso, and Kismayo. The Council of Ministers has also decided to annul all agreements currently in force between the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the government of the United Arab Emirates, including bilateral security and defense cooperation agreements.
The Somali Council of Ministers also confirmed that the decision was taken based on reports and what it described as strong evidence of practices that undermine Somalia's sovereignty, national unity, and political independence.
This decision comes in light of reports and strong evidence of negative practices that undermine state sovereignty, national unity, and political independence. Such actions violate the principles of sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, and respect for the constitutional order of states, as set out in the United Nations Charter, the African Union Constitutive Act, the Charter of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the Charter of the League of Arab States. All organizations of which the Federal Republic of Somalia is a member. These actions also run counter to the clearly expressed will of the Somali people. The Council has instructed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to formally notify the United Arab Emirates of these decisions, coordinate their implementation, and inform international and regional partners, including the African Union, the United Nations, while reaffirming Somalia's sovereign rights and constitutional authorities.
In northern Nigeria, students returned to school on January 12th after nearly 2 months of closures due to security concerns. Last November, the government shut schools following a wave of student kidnappings, including 2 mass abductions in Kebbi and Niger states. More with Yasin Rikti now.
Students returned to classrooms across northern Nigeria on Monday after schools reopened following nearly 2 months of closure over security fears, as authorities rolled out heightened measures to counter the threat of mass kidnappings. At government secondary school in Mashi in Kaduna State, girls in brown hijabs filed through the school gates under the watchful eyes of teachers, while roadside vendors resumed selling snacks to pupils outside the compound. For many students, the moment felt like the first day of a new school year rather than a midterm resumption.
I feel safe going back to our school because I have teachers. I have elder ones that used to take care of us just the way they do in our house.
The cautious optimism among students was evident as they rejoined their classes, reassured by the presence of teachers and school staff tasked with their care and protection. To calm parental fears, Kaduna state authorities deployed vigilance service trucks and civil defense officers around schools and key access roads. Officials say the measures are aimed at restoring confidence in a region scarred by repeated attacks on educational institutions. For parents like civil servant Haruna Danjuma, keeping children at home is not an option. He said abductions must not deprive children of their right to education.
Kidnapping is not an issue that will make you stop giving your child or a right to learn or to send her to school because you are afraid of her being kidnapped.
Northern Nigeria has endured years of insecurity, from the 2014 abduction of 270 schoolgirls in Chibok to hundreds of similar cases since. As classrooms fill again, the question remains whether armed patrols can offer lasting safety or whether students and teachers are once more stepping into uncertainty, hoping this return to normalcy will last.
Moving on to North Africa, the Moroccan occupation continues its crackdown on Sahrawi activists in the occupied territories, targeting them for peaceful human rights work. The latest incident involved the personal car of activist Khadijatu Daou in Laayoune, whose tires were slashed. Human rights groups say this reflects a broader systematic policy of harassment and retaliations against Sahrawi defenders.
للتذكير راهو المرة الثانية تتفاجأ المناضلة عضو تجمع المدافعين.
The activist, a member of human rights defenders, was taken by surprise when her car's tire was punctured by the Moroccan occupation. This serves as a reminder that this is the second time she has been subjected to such an incident.
شق روايد الواتساب وتم فشهم ويطردوا لها.
The Executive Bureau of the Sahrawi Collective of Human Rights Defenders, Codessa, condemned Morocco's continued targeting of Sahrawi activists. In a statement, the organization expressed full solidarity with activist Khadijatu Daou, holding the occupation responsible for the safety of human rights defenders. Codessa also called on UN bodies and international human rights organizations to act urgently to protect Sahrawi defenders.
We strongly condemn the continued targeting by the Moroccan occupation forces of this human rights defender and other Sahrawi human rights defenders, as well as the targeting of their private property, and hold the occupation fully responsible for the safety and security of Sahrawi human rights defenders. We also urgently call on United Nations mechanisms and international human rights organizations to intervene without delay to protect Sahrawi human rights defenders and to ensure full respect for the Declaration on the Protection of Human Rights Defenders.
The Sahrawi human rights group Codessa has renewed calls for an independent international mechanism to monitor the human rights situation in Western Sahara and protect civilians.
The collective reiterates its call for the establishment for an independent international mechanism to monitor and report on the human rights situation in Western Sahara and to ensure the protection of Sahrawi civilians, and affirms that the continued international silence regarding these crimes against humanity fosters impunity and undermines the fundamental principles of international law and human rights.
Meanwhile, two Sahrawi students, Salahuddin Sabah and Ibrahim Babayit, have begun a 48-hour hunger strike while serving 8-month sentences for their political views. According to the Sahrawi news agency, they are protesting degrading treatment in 8 Malul, 2 prison, including physical abuse, overcrowded cells, and harassment by fellow inmates reportedly incited by prison staff. And in another topical development, U.S. President Donald Trump said Sunday the United States would annex Greenland one way or another. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Donald Trump claimed that if the U.S. didn't act, Russia or China would, and stressed he wouldn't allow that to happen.
We don't take Greenland, Russia or China will. and I'm not letting that happen. If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I am not going to let that happen. Sure, I'd love to make a deal with them. It's easier. But one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says Denmark is at a critical point in its diplomatic standoff with the United States over Greenland after Donald Trump renewed threats to seize the Arctic island. Frederiksen posted the statement on social media ahead of talks in Washington on Monday about global competition for key raw materials, emphasizing that the stakes extend far beyond Greenland's future.
The United States has once again repeated its pursuit of taking control of Greenland. The governing coalition in Greenland cannot accept this under any circumstances. The government will intensify its efforts to ensure that the defense of Greenland is addressed within the framework of NATO.
The Greenland government on Monday strongly rejected any U.S. attempt to seize the Arctic island. In a statement, officials said they are determined to strengthen Greenland's defense within the framework of NATO, underscoring their commitment to protecting the territory's sovereignty.
There is an ongoing dispute over Greenland. We are facing a critical moment for our country, with implications that go beyond the future of the island alone. We are ready to defend our values wherever necessary, including the Arctic. We believe in international law and in people's right to self-determination.
On a related note, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says the alliance is working to strengthen Arctic security as Denmark boosts its defense of Greenland. Speaking in Zagreb, Rutte stressed these measures provide collective protection for the island, and at the same time, EU Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius warned that any U.S. attempt to seize Greenland by force could end NATO, and emphasized that EU nations are obliged to assist Denmark against military aggression.
First of all, stress that all allies agree on the importance of the Arctic and Arctic security, because we know that with sea lanes opening up, there is a risk that the Russians and the Chinese will be more active. By encouraging us all to spend more, to equalize this, what the US is spending, we had a very successful summit in The Hague, where we decided on the 5% defense spending, including 3.5% on core defense. I'm absolutely convinced without Donald Trump, we would never have had that result at the summit in The Hague.
And as another reaction, China has urged the United States not to use other countries as a pretext to pursue its interest in Greenland, following President Trump's remarks about keeping Russia and China out of the island. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said on Monday that China's Arctic activities focus on promoting peace, stability, and sustainable development, and called on all nations to respect the rights of countries to carry out legitimate activities in the region. And in a different matter, U.S. President Donald Trump says his administration is working well with Venezuela's interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez, and that he is open to meeting her at some point, as ties between Washington and Caracas show signs of cautious engagement following recent development in the country. Donald Trump made the comments to reporters aboard Air Force One, noting cooperation with Venezuelan leadership amid the ongoing diplomatic efforts is going well. Venezuela has reaffirmed its support for self-determination and full sovereignty, responding to U.S. calls for Cuba to change its political system. The government emphasized non-interference, the equal rights of nations, and that political dialogue is the only way to resolve conflicts peacefully, highlighting its long-standing commitment to Cuba. And finally, the Algerian diaspora marked the Amazigh New Year, or aka Yenayer, celebrating their heritage and calling for unity among expatriates. Let's get more details with Salman Asib now.
Though geography may separate them, the heart continues to beat for Algeria, a bond reaffirmed by Algerians living in France. The celebration of the Amazigh New Year, Yinayer, offers another opportunity to renew this commitment, turning the occasion into a unifying moment that strengthens the connection between expatriates and their motherland through a shared national identity. We were honored today to receive an invitation from Mr. Consul on the occasion of the celebration of our happy Amazigh New Year. On this occasion, we wish you all goodness, happiness and well-being, especially for our country and the Algerian people. We share with you the joy of this celebration and say to everyone, Happy Yinayer, and may you be well every year, God willing. With smiles on their faces, members of the Algerian community seize national celebrations as a moment of reunion, renewing pride in their history and celebrating rich, diverse traditions they are determined to pass on from one generation to the next in a lasting message of unity and belonging. I came with my mother and sister to celebrate the Yinayer. I wish peace and happiness to our country.
Je souhaite la paix et le bonheur à notre pays.
January 2976 stands as yet another testament of Algeria's deep-rooted authenticity, history, and civilizational heritage, an annual occasion that reflects a firmly established identity and strengthens the bond among sons and daughters on the same homeland, wherever they may be.
And with these UUs, thank you for watching and take care.